What is up, YouTube people? Eric here with Team Badman, and I've got another interview today for you guys. If you guys remember, a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that I was out in New York hanging out with Mr. Waffles, checking out somewhere I hadn't been in New York, working on some side projects and whatnot, and playing a whole lot of cards. And I did tell you guys I captured quite a bit of content while I was out there, and today's interview is directly from there. I was able to get an interview with David Fashbinder, who, as we know, has done playtesting for both the prior Scorzy game and for Pansy in some of the earlier expansions. And I was able to get his insight on kind of the process for, testing the game, some of the ideas where everything came from, including some of the stuff that he's working on right now, and some possible directions where the game might be going in the future. So I'm going to, just kind of stop talking here, and I'm going to let the interview speak for itself. Past me, take it away.
And we're like in the most sketchiest place ever, but hey, we're doing what we got to do, the ghetto interview for sure. So have you take it away, Eric.
And make it work wherever you're at. So, of course, we're interviewing Dave Fashbinder. Thanks for letting us do this, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Awesome. So we know that you're kind of a big figure in the community and whatnot. Everyone knows you from the old game and whatnot, where you did a lot of play testing and whatnot. So, I wanted to get your opinion on some of the kind of comparisons between the old and the new, and what you think and whatnot.
Sure. Old game was a lot of fun. I definitely did play testing. They didn't bring us in until after Fusion Saga already dropped to develop Kid Buu. So we didn't get a whole lot of time on the old Z kind of retro game. Bled over into GT, bled over into Yu Yu Hakusho. But that was a lot of fun. I mean, old game was not designed with as much intention from the start. So what I mean by that is they didn't really design with the future in mind. It was just throwing a lot of cool cards together. And then the game just never rotated out even after 11 sets. Hit this critical mass where you had multiples of the same effect and just stuff that synergized together to the point of absolute ridiculousness. Mm-hmm. Best example, like the Black Bojack deck that I love, from that end of Z kind of era, where I think it has like 24 attacks that automatically discard a card from your opponent's hand.
Yep. Remember that.
Just kind of nuts, right? New game, kind of learned our way through the first few sets. I'm no longer on the development team. I've taken a sabbatical. I can go back if I want, but I'm really enjoying playing this OP season. Okay. So I'm going to see that through. If I scrub out too many more events like I did in New York Regionals, then I might just go back a little early. But, we had a very different design method. Set 1, set 2 we refined it a bit. Set 3 we really refined it. Changed up a little bit for sets 4, 5, and 6. Set 6 actually I didn't work on, so I don't know why I even said that. Definitely loving the game. A little bit more balanced this time around, I think, even though it doesn't feel that way all the time. But I'm really happy with the product that's out there right now.
Absolutely. Everything looks, absolutely great. Knowing that you've been a big part of it must feel, kind of satisfying that you helped kind of refine all of this. And something that had the longevity, of the old score game, how it's basically the same. So you had mentioned that, you did play testing in the latter part of Z, but more in the part of GT, and especially how you've done it now. How do you think the play testing back in the late Z and the GT compared to how you play test now? Like, was there a different approach? Do you think it was different because a lot of the GT cards were kind of just rehashes of some of the Z cards, just kind of ramped up and whatnot? And, in set 1, we had a bunch of the reprints. You had Time, you had Blue Lunge, all of that good stuff and whatnot. How do you think the old game and new game compared in the playtesting environment?
I think the playtesting environment, especially for like GT, was really weird because you had two formats, right? You had focused and you had expanded, and you had to playtest for both. And we were able to playtest for both in the first couple of sets, but it resulted in like a really bland focused product, especially for the first set. Super 17 kind of brought it to life a little bit more. There wasn't as much direct collaboration, so like we'd test, we'd give feedback. We wouldn't necessarily know if the changes we suggested were being implemented. Sometimes we would, sometimes we wouldn't. So for example, like during set 2 playtesting, we caught Android 17's Personal Touch, which was like the most broken card that came out in that set. Which enabled like all the decks that were in like top 4 at Worlds that year for Focus Worlds, and we reported it, and like the change fell through and never got implemented. So that card stayed as broken as we knew it was, going into the OP season. Now the whole development team is kind of one. So we're designing, we're testing, we're giving feedback. We're really have a good methodology as far as like, is this a card that we'll see play? Is this card gonna ever be included in a deck? I mean, honestly, most of the time, if you see a card, then you look at it, it's like, I would never include this in a deck. I don't know what's going on. It's possible it was a really late revision because it was discovered to be like really OP and we couldn't agree on how to refine it without just trashing it. Or it could be an oversight. There aren't too many of those, but they do happen, especially across some of the larger sets.
Yeah, naturally. And I think one thing that's really nice about the current game is sets don't feel too large or too overwhelming. And, you get a nice balance of all the different kinds of cards. Even though some are, of course, more powerful than others, especially in their interactions. But, it's going to happen with any game. So while we're on the topic of the old game, Set 1 had a ton of reprints, the old stuff like we mentioned. But a lot of cards have been overlooked, some that could be really great for this game. What are some personal favorites of yours that you would love to see get reprinted?
As far as like gold text or...
either gold text or slightly reworded cards from the old game that haven't made their way into Panini.
That's a really good question. I think one card that would be really good right now would be some form of Huge Drill, which was an Irwin promo.
Yes.
Really didn't do too much. Had a static effect. I think it made all attacks do an extra stage of damage, but it allowed you to stop unstoppable attacks, which we're starting to again hit that critical mass where you have an art deck like Orange Krillin that can run 3 Sinister Chokes, 3 Discs, 3 Orange Tank Barrages. Yep. You have a lot of different unstoppable attack avenues now. I think that would be kind of cool. I'm just really curious to see what they do with Majin Babidi in the new game, because he had one of my favorite cards, and I actually had suggested this as a card to help Saiyan really early on in the game. It would have been terrible, it would have been the most confusing thing ever, but like my idea was sound, like the spirit was good, where it was Majin Babidi's power extension, where it was an event, it was Babidi only, so it never saw play at any major level of OP, but it basically took all your floating effects from the combat you were in and extended them to the next combat. So back when Saiyan was all about like building up for that one really good combat, and then your opponent would black power up or blinding energy move or defensive burst, and you'd just be like, even though I guess that still happens now, you would be able to like have all your good stuff, going on to the next combat. So if you had big buffs, if you had this, if you have that, you would be able to have another shot at it, so to speak. Not sure what Saiyan needs to get over that hump. Maybe they need to go crazy and throw a Saiyan Truce card in the mix. I don't know.
It could be.
Maybe a revised version of it, where maybe you just get to hold 1 or 2 extra cards. I don't know. There's a lot of old cards from the old game that honestly have no business being in the new game as well. One thing that I do think would be great, which I think there was a poll on Facebook, the Retro DBZ group recently, about adding Empowered back to the game as a mechanic.
Yes.
I'm a huge fan of that. I'm actually not... the response seemed very lukewarm. I get it from a sense of maybe overcomplicating cards, but I absolutely love it for a way to play more tech cards in your deck.
Oh, yeah.
And still get great value for them if you don't need the tech in that situation. I mean, especially once you start talking like Empower 3, Empower 4. And I mean, for those of you who play this game, you can't tell me there aren't times where you wouldn't want just even 1 extra life card on your deck. You're like, I don't need this effect, my opponent's already at 0 anger, he doesn't have any Dragon Balls to capture, he doesn't have any allies to banish.
Agreed.
Wouldn't it be great? And just a little flexibility, it would just add that, not to mention this game, we really haven't introduced any new mechanics at all, if you think about it. New mechanics are a lot of fun. Empower, in my opinion, was probably the best mechanic introduced after Endurance in the old game. Sensei decks were cool, but obviously during the life of the old game, they were really lame because you were basically just playing it for the power of your Sensei. The cards that you could put in the Sensei deck, with some very few exceptions, like Black Pivot Kick, were really not that good. So until the Sensei got opened up, and all the afterlife of the game, where you could put any card in and stuff like that, there weren't too many interesting mechanics. I felt Empowered was one.
Right on. I mean, it would be really nice to see some of those extra mechanics extended out there. Even if some of them wouldn't make it in, like Mask Attacks or Train, and just about
no
anything
masks.
from GT.
No mask
masks.
attacks.
Please don't. Please don't. If you're hearing Panini.
No, those Shadow Dragons. So, full disclaimer: I quit before Shadow Dragon and playtesting started. Shadow Dragon was nuts. From what I heard from the development team, they weren't even allowed to playtest Expanded for that set. It was all about Focused. They came out with all those new mechanics all at once. They were super confusing. Augment felt like it should have been named Train. Train felt like it should have been named Augment. Like they didn't even sound like their keywords. It was really confusing.
Just like
that is an example of how not to add new mechanics to a game. But I think if you do like a simple one like Empower or come up with something new, hey, why not? I'm open. I think it would be really fun, and maybe even in a set like a set 8, the next expansion with no starters, because new starter set, you're going to have new masteries, hopefully new Dragon Balls. Full disclaimer, I know nothing about the new set. But I think it would be a good opportunity to, especially because by my calculations, I think that's going to be after OP season ends, or right around there. And, we're always, you don't want to feel like it's that lost set, where there's no OP.
Yeah. It's either that or it falls like right before Worlds or something like that. So it may get a little play, it may not. I guess we're about to find out.
I mean, that's always interesting. The first ever, technically the second, but the first real Worlds for the old game. Android Saga was only legal for the top 16. So they did top 16 on day 2, and it was only legal. And a couple of the really old players, they like to joke around with me. They're like, oh yeah, if you only made top 16, you would have won. Because, I was just all about those Android Saga cards at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And I had this sick Piccolo the Trained, orange, Trunks Saga Mastery, obviously the only mastery then, deck that handled Saiyan, it handled Anger, it just demolished everybody. But unfortunately, I came in 18th place. Because for those of you that don't know, the first Worlds, first half was sealed deck, and the second half was constructed in Swiss. So I drafted like an awful sealed deck, and I even won out. I went undefeated in the constructed side, but I couldn't squeeze out enough wins to crack top 16, mind you, at Worlds. And there were a good amount of people there. Starting next year, they expanded it to top 64.
Yeah.
But that year, it was a tough class to get in.
Oh, definitely. It was a very different time. We've talked a lot about Scorsy and whatnot, the old game. So let's fast forward and let's bring it up to the new game.
Sure.
I know that there's a bunch of new and exciting decks, especially since Vengeance just came out and whatnot. What do you have on the docket? What are your kind of favorite decks right now? Your maybe secret weapons, stuff that you're checking out?
So decks I've got built right now that I'm having fun with. I've got a black Devious 13. Who doesn't?
Exactly.
I've got a red Enraged 13 that I'm really. It's the first deck in a really long time that I'm really carefully tweaking and did not work great the first time around. I'm learning it, making a lot of changes. It's a lot of fun. A little bit more counterplay than what Black offers, but Black 13 is just so strong. I've got an orange Adept Tien deck that's a lot of fun. It just uses Adept Mastery, and people are like, what's going on? I don't even know what your Mastery does. And
it's like super good. We will have a match of that coming up very soon here. I did get a chance to play it. It's so good.
Yeah, I don't think it would ever be like OP level ready, at least not right now. It would definitely be good for a local event. I actually used it at a local event 2 weeks ago, and I did pretty well with it. And I've done some tweaking since then, so I'd be interested to take it maybe after Gen Con passes and the play testing need has died down. Plus, that deck, it's finally hit like critical mass with effects like Orange Drain, Orange Short Chop, Orange Gathering, Tien's Preparation, all that sort of stuff. You're finally hitting that critical mass where the deck becomes viable. And then I'm trying to toy with a Saiyan deck. I think right now in the meta, some sort of Saiyan guaranteed stage loss deck would really offer something interesting, especially if you just make the right meta call and your matches line up, where you play a lot of Android 13 or Gohan tag team or something like that. You could really just run over people. Bunch of new cards like Saiyan Trap, I think has a ton of potential in a format like that.
Awesome.
Obviously, Saiyan Menace, all that, traditional loot. Saiyan's actually got a lot of interesting control options, in my opinion, right now, between some strong energy attacks that don't even cost stages, to a lot of interesting counterplay, like Saiyan Tracking Blast. Unleashed offers a lot for characters like, let's say, Raditz or Nappa, to, really be strong in that format as well. So I know it would be an uphill battle. Definitely going to take that to a local as opposed to walking into Gen Con with it. But I've got an Alpha Raditz build that I'm not really feeling. I think it might be a time that I try it as Nappa. But definitely think it should be fun. So that's the decks that I've got right now.
You heard it right here first. So you may want to kind of dig into those a little bit if Fashbinder's got some ideas in there. So one more question before we go. A question that I've seen a lot and I've discussed a lot with other people is the idea of longevity in this game. When you consider Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon and Magic the Gathering, they don't have like a set lore to them, or they kind of build their own. Whereas Dragon Ball Z, the game, has a finite ending point. So once we hit the end of the Kid Buu saga, it's basically kind of it, unless we go GT or Super or Old Dragon Ball or whatever. Do you think this game actually has the longevity to make it, maybe as long as Score did or longer? And what do you think it would take for the game to maintain that level of longevity? If it's, like new sets, or if it's side sets that don't have AMPs, or whatever it might be.
I mean, Score only lasted 4 years. I think in retrospect, a lot of people remember it as much longer, plus maybe they're factoring GT into that and things like that. But the old Z game was 2000 and 2004.
Correct.
So, it wouldn't take a whole lot of effort. We're already in year 2. Of this game, so it really wouldn't be too much, I think, at this point to say another 2 years. I think would be very, very easy. Beyond that, as far as I'm concerned, it should be able to go on as long as Panini wants to produce it. The way that sets are licensed and all that sort of stuff, I don't think there's any reason they can't keep going back to the well to create other sets. I mean, even think about Star Wars, right? So Star Wars, the original Decipher game, had a limited, canon to go through, right?
Yes.
They only had, even at that point, they only had 3 movies for the most of it. Phantom Menace came out towards the end of that game's life. But they went back and they did sets where they made foils of cards that weren't available, because they didn't have foils in that game for a long time. So they made foils, and some of that stuff's worth a ton of money. But there's other ways that you can kind of extend the life. And think about it. Most of this player base is mature already, right? So it's not necessarily something we're probably going to grow out of too much at this point. We have the disposable income. It's a popular property. Funimation is very happy that the property is being used and generating money. It makes it look good for them that they can market anime in the United States and have other revenue channels come through. So I think as long as it keeps them doing well, making money, and Panini's all about it, I think that we'll see the game for a long time.
That'd be absolutely fantastic. So awesome. Thanks so much for letting us interview you, David. We really appreciate it. We love getting to ask questions to important figures and playtesters especially, so we can get a little bit of insight. So definitely thanks so much for letting us do this. Thanks to you guys, the viewers, for hanging out with us and checking out our interview with David Fashbinder. We really appreciate it. For those of you guys who don't know who we are, be sure to go check out Team Badman over on YouTube. You guys can find us there. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and whatnot. So be sure to hit us up over there. And if you haven't already, be sure to give Mr. Waffles a like and a subscribe and whatnot as well. He's got some fantastic content as well. So that's pretty much going to do it here. Thanks again one more time to David for letting us interview him. We really, really appreciate it.
Of course. I'll see everybody at Gen Con.
Sounds good.
We will all see you guys there.
So that was our interview with David Fashbinder. Really hope you guys liked it. If you did, be sure to click the like button down below. If not, click the dislike button down below and let me know what you guys didn't like so that I can fix it for future interviews and for future sections that we decide to do. Also, if you guys haven't already, be sure to click the subscribe button down below so that you guys can follow this series and all of our other series that we're doing. We've got some really cool and exciting ones coming up in the future, especially as new games come out here. Xenoverse 2 will be coming out in just a couple of months, and we're hoping to cover that. And we're going to have some other side stuff going on as well as we make our way through the regional season, so be sure to check all of that out. And lastly, if you guys haven't found us on social media, all of our social media links are down below in the description. So you guys can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Libsyn, which for those guys who don't know, Libsyn is podcast hosting. And I am in kind of the final stages of wrapping up, some podcast details, getting things together. So we will have that out for you guys very soon. So that is going to do it for this interview. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. So I'm Eric, the Team Badman, signing out. And like always, stay bad. We'll see you guys in the next interview. Catch you later.